right, Dead by Daylight chapters are a very important thing in the game. Obviously, it adds a lot of content, killer, survivor, sometimes just cosmetics. But today I'm going to discuss 10 chapters that I personally want to see in the game. It doesn't have to be, what everyone wants to see. This is what I want to see, so this is not up for debate. You can shit on it all you want, but this is my personal opinion, and this is what I want to see in the game. And kicking us off first is the one that's been going around a lot, and which is Darth Vader or Star Wars. Darth Vader would be incredible to be in Dead by Daylight. He's one of the most iconic characters of all time, and if I see the point that people don't want Dead by Daylight to move away from this horror aspect, but at the end of the day, are you personally telling me that you log onto the game and you get scared about it anymore? It's like it's not got that horror feel to it anymore because people have just turned it into too competitive a game. No one is terrified running around the same loop to get to a pallet and then flashlight and teabag. Like, no one's scared doing that, are they? So, if we want to move towards the aspect of it's a PvP, 4 survivors versus 1 killer, Darth Vader's killer count is ridiculous. And he's killed so many people and he's an evil, evil man. The lore is there itself. Former Jedi gone evil to the dark side, severely burnt, now part robotic, constantly angry and full of rage, and sees himself above others and feels that he's superior. Like, it's a great character for the game, and it would add a lot. It would bring such an influx of players, and it would potentially take the game to a new level in terms of the amount of interest it would build and the amount of players that it might bring in new to the game, because Star Wars is such a big franchise. It's one of the biggest in the world, and I think Darth Vader adds a lot. If I'm going to discuss how I think he would work, because obviously a character that powerful with a weapon that powerful, it's like, how do you get it to work? So I kind of thought about it and I was like, I don't think that a lightsaber could be his basic attack. Because realistically, you shouldn't have to be hitting someone twice with a lightsaber for them to just go down and then put on a hook. So I thought that his basic attack can just kind of be a force push, where if you get close enough to them, you just, like that, and that kind of a basic attack. And then I feel like the lightsaber should be his power, where it's kind of like an insta-down, similar to like Leatherface, where he kind of gets it out and goes into like a frenzy of just constant attacks and charging forward, goes through pallets and everything, just constant sweeping sort of thing with a lightsaber, and if you hit with it, it's an insta-down. And I think to try and make him a little bit more strong, because he is supposed to be strong, and make him different to Leatherface, I feel like you'd give him a secondary ability, sort of like a scouting ability, almost like an informational ability, because he's good at tracking. He's got a mask that helps him see things, and yeah, I think him just being able to sense presences far away. So maybe like if he downs someone with the lightsaber attack, then he gets to like sort of get killer instinct on people in a certain radius. I think is a good potential. I mean, that's an add-on ability potentially, but I think he needs some sort of informational ability on top of his sort of sweeping attack ability to make him a little bit more usable and to make him different from Leatherface and to make him just powerful, because he's supposed to be powerful. Moving on then is probably one of the most requested chapters I've seen, and I've wanted it for ages, and I can't believe it's not in the game already, but it's It, or Pennywise. I don't think a survivor would come with this chapter because they're all kids, and Dead by Daylight doesn't really like doing that, which is completely understandable. But yeah, Pennywise would be a great addition. Obviously a horror character, sticking to the roots. It's a classic. They had the miniseries back in the 80s, I think, and then obviously the films that came out in 2019 and 2021. I think the second chapter came out. This is another killer that could be insanely powerful. I mean, like, this is basically a godlike entity. Like, he's unmatched really in terms of power potential. It's just, how do you put that into a game form? Obviously, like, its true form isn't a clown. It's just, that's what it thinks will scare kids the most, I guess, and it goes off fear. So I think his ability being sort of a shapeshifter would be pretty good, because that's basically what he is. He's just a shapeshifter that tries to get fear out of people. and I think some sort of passive ability where you build up a fear meter to a point that you can insta down people instead of just downing them, kind of like Myers' Stalk, but maybe done a little bit better. And then Shapeshifter. I think I've always wanted a killer that can shapeshift into a survivor and sort of trick people into thinking that he's a survivor, and then like surprise attack, he just downs them. So I've always wanted something like that. I think it'd be quite cool, quite funny, and it gives survivors something else to think about. Is this survivor that I'm currently doing a gen with even a survivor, or is it a killer? We don't know. So I think that would be quite interesting. Shaun of the Dead is a pretty simple one. It's not really like a horror film, but it kind of classes as a horror film, but it's more of a horror comedy. But Shaun of the Dead would be a great chapter. Doesn't need a killer. I think a zombie would just be a bit boring. But definitely having Shaun, obviously, as the survivor, and I think Ed as well could be a legendary version of Shaun. The same way that like Steve had the Jonathan legendary skin from Stranger Things, I think that Ed could be a legendary skin for Shaun as well. I think that they'd just be a great duo. I think you could get voice lines as well from... is it Sean Pegg, his name, who plays him? Yeah, I think... Yeah, you could do a lot. I think you get voice lines, it'd be fun. It'd be similar to like Nick Cage, I think. So yeah, that could be fun. Moving on then, I've got the Joker and Bruce Wayne, sort of a Arkham Knight almost. Like, I feel like the collaboration would be with the Arkham games from rather than movie counterparts. I think would be a lot more fun. I don't think Joker should be a killer though. I think he should be a legendary skin of the Trickster potentially, or even the Clown. But I think there's more. I think Trickster portrays himself more as the Joker than Clown does. I think the knives would be fine for the Joker, I guess, and even like adding in the legendary skin a different Maury and having like him laugh every so often. Maybe try and convince Mark Hamill to do some voice lines from like he did in the Arkham games, and then. Obviously, people would want Batman, but Batman's just way too powerful to be a survivor. So I think that him just being Bruce Wayne without all the tech could be a great idea for a survivor potentially. He's still insanely smart, so obviously his teachable perks would be pretty good. But he doesn't have the gadgets and stuff that would make him too powerful. So Bruce Wayne, I think, would be a good survivor as himself, not a skin. Like Bruce Wayne would be the actual survivor, and then Joker would kind of be a legendary skin of the Trickster, where you could sort of give him his own Maury and maybe his own voice lines as well. The next one is a bit... The next few, I think... Well, no, the next two definitely are kind of ones where it's like, they'd be really cool to have in the game. It's just how do you work the mechanics of it. So the first one's Jurassic Park, and I think a T-Rex just wouldn't work. It's too big. But maybe like a Velociraptor, I think could be a legendary skin to the Oni, because I feel like their powers could work similarly in that, you know, if you collect enough blood, you can get a dash ability because Velociraptors are incredibly fast. So I think, you know, having a Velociraptor potentially as a legendary skin for the Oni and kind of make their powers just work the same. But obviously the weapon would be different. A Velociraptor would just bite instead of using the big blade thing that Oni has. The same way with that big stick thing he has, he'd just bite as well. But I think it could work. I think it would be different. It's just how does it work? And then the next one is even more of a how on earth does it work, but it would be so cool, and it's Jaws. I've seen a concept for it, and it does look doable. It's just what do you do with the maps? Do you put them all underwater? I don't think Dead by Daylight has to be realistic. You know, we've got a mage from Dead by Daylight doing magic spells. It doesn't need to be realistic. And I think if you got the entity to sort of put this bubble of water around the shark, that the water just moves with him, so that he's still underwater, but it's in this bubble almost. And I feel like the power almost could be that if survivors get caught in this bubble, like basically his terror radius, they get hindered maybe, and that helps the killer a lot. But obviously the bubble wouldn't be massive. It would be like maybe just a small radius around him, like in his immediate vicinity. So if you're close enough to him, you get that hindered effect, and I think that would work. It means that all the maps don't have to be underwater, and he's just get a bubble of water so he can move around. And the bubble just like moves with him as he swims. I think it's a bit unrealistic, but at the same time, it's a game. It doesn't have to be ridiculous. The next one is a Stranger Things Part 2. I think we've been waiting for this for a while. Season 4, and yeah, Season 4 came out like 3 years ago now, and then Season 5 has been announced to be releasing at the end of the year, and I think, after this year, there's no more Stranger Things. Stranger Things is done. So I think Dead by Daylight potentially need to capitalise on this. But also, we've been waiting for more things from Stranger Things. Vecna is especially one that has been highly requested. He could be a legendary skin for Vecna in the game, and they could just have the same powers. I mean, Vecna from Stranger Things works a lot differently because he's not actually Vecna, that's just the name they gave to him. But he could work, and I think on the Survivor side, we could get Robin Buckley. Obviously, you're not going to have any of the kids for obvious reasons, but Robin is a beloved character in Stranger Things, and I think should work. And I don't think you'd have to have her as her own character, like the same way that Jonathan is a legendary character for Steve. I think you could have Robin as a legendary character for Nancy, and I think that would work. 3 left then. Next is Scream. I think we do already have Ghostface in the game, but I think the Scream chapter would kind of more so be the Survivor side. I think Sidney Prescott has to be in this game. She's one of the most iconic survivors in horror history, and I think she has to be in the game. I feel like you could work a deal to get Neve Campbell's likeness and maybe even get her to do some lines, voice lines, that is. And yeah, I think Scream would work really well. And secondly, I think you wouldn't obviously release another Ghostface killer, but you'd have potentially cosmetics on top of the Ghostface that's already there. Maybe you could have one where it's just the costume and Billy Loomis's head, or Stu. We've already got Matthew Lillard potentially doing a cosmetic for Springtrap in the next week or so. So maybe he could be a cosmetic for Ghostface as well. Why not? And yeah, just little cosmetics from the movies, whether you've got like the old Crumble mask or just anything like that. Maybe just more of looking like the movie, and maybe some voice lines like, I don't know, maybe you can add a different part to his power where, he's got the phone call, because that was one of the most iconic things about the movie, was the phone call. But I don't know, we're just naming things, but I think the Survivor side would be more involved with this chapter, being Sidney Prescott. I think she definitely needs to be in the game. Penultimately, which is actually the last killer on the list, the last one after this isn't really a chapter at all. But this one, I think Megan, similarly to Chucky, is a possessed doll, but it's kind of AI. It's not really the same way Chucky is just some sort of voodoo magic. But Megan, I think, is actually quite popular. She's like a recent movie. She has a movie coming out this year, if it's not already out. And yeah, I think it would work. She's a bit shorter. She's taller than Chucky, but I think like she might be the same height as like the Hag. I think she'd work. She'd have a different ability to Chucky, obviously, because she's AI. I think there's a lot more that you can do with her in terms of her power. And I think it would work. You could make it goofy, give her voice lines, because she is just a goofy character. There's plenty of scenes in the movie where she's just dancing for no reason. So I feel like you could definitely do something with her. And finally, this isn't really a chapter or so, but we've had band collabs, like we had Slipknot and Iron Maiden, and I think when I think of rock bands, I think of Metallica. I think Metallica would be a good little cosmetic chapter to have in the game, where, rock music is obviously tied to horror a lot, and I think Metallica would be a great addition. They're one of the biggest rock bands of all time, and some of their music really just sounds like horror music, if that makes any sort of sense. So yeah, I think Metallica to have some sort of cosmetics would be great. And yeah, that's my 10 chapters. I hope you enjoyed. Let me know what chapters you want to see, and let me know if any of these chapters are realistic, whether you want to see them, or any of these chapters that you think, yeah, that shouldn't work, or we shouldn't have that in the game, which I feel like that will be a case in some of them at least anyway. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you later.